This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
He spoke earlier today, and pretty much throughout the United States of America, maybe even much of the world, folks were paying attention. We are the center of the, I guess you could say, pop culture universe, given how much is at stake with the horrible tragedy we've all endured over the weekend. He is the acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota, Joe Thompson, kind enough to join us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. Thank you very much for the time, I know, on a ridiculously busy day. I want to ask first how you first became aware of this story, because I think for everybody, regardless of their position, it was difficult processing this thing almost from the beginning as we came to understand the horrendous nature of the crime. How did it play out for you?
Dan, thanks for having me. Yeah, I got a call first thing early Saturday morning from the FBI informing me that there had been shootings and that Representative Portman had been murdered along with her husband, and that there was the perpetrator was at large. Like everyone else in state, federal local law enforcement in Minnesota, I jumped into action and went from there.
You described this in your presser today as a political assassination. Do you view it, you characterize it that way because the individuals that he's trying to harm obviously were elected officials, or because you are starting to get a sense of specific politics of the alleged perpetrator that leads you in that direction?
Well, I say that because that's what it is, and I wanted to make sure that it was clear to everyone's in the collective consciousness of what we're dealing with here, the seriousness of the situation. Clearly, he was targeting elected officials. In terms of his motivations, that's still unclear. As I mentioned this morning, although there were press reports of a manifesto, he didn't have that style of Unabomber-style manifesto or screed where he laid out a political philosophy or beliefs or rants. And what we found was lists of politicians, notes on them, names, addresses, family members, descriptions of their homes, evidence of surveillance, but not a coherent political ideology that was motivating these horrific crimes.
Is it possible that over the course, as you guys repeated several times, this is an ongoing investigation, do you feel like it's quite possible, as we get closer and closer, or further along in this case, that you guys will be willing to go further in terms of motivation?
Absolutely, to the extent we determine what that is, and we get to the point in an investigation where we understand what motivated him, if it was an ideology or political beliefs, I would imagine that would become public. We're just not there yet. It's not clear to us exactly what was going through his mind and what was motivating him, other than his desire to kill elected officials. Is there,
so as I understand it on the list, and I some people called it a hit list, which might not be completely fair. I don't know how you would characterize it. The list of names in various places that you have uncovered. There are also, I think, lists having to do with those who, I believe isn't there a couple of abortion clinics, among other things, also on that list?
There was some names that were related to abortion in some way. Most of the names that I saw, and there's dozens and dozens of names in the various lists of names, and some are duplicated on various lists or notepads, pieces of paper. Most of them were politicians, Democratic politicians, as far as I can tell, although they were not all Minnesota right. Politicians. There were some from other states, and I don't frankly know their party affiliation necessarily. But beyond that, I can't say what his motivation was, or if there was some ideology or if abortion had anything to do with it.
Are they why did these charges rise to the level of federal charges? What brought them to that place?
Well, I mean, he committed federal crimes. Obviously, the seriousness of the crime. He was stalking his victims using the internet and facilities of interstate commerce, which gives us federal charges. He committed a murder in connection with those stalkings, and he used a firearm, which are all federal crimes and of the utmost seriousness. And so that's why we're here, or why we're able to charge it federally. Obviously, the closest analog also has a Minnesota connection, and that's the murder of the CEO of United Healthcare in Midtown Manhattan just some months ago by Luigi Mangione, and he also was charged federally with similar statutes.
Is there, and as I understand it, also there is the possibility of death with among these charges, or where this might go. Explain exactly how that option might play out.
Sure, there are some of the statutes, some of the federal statutes do carry the possibility of the death penalty. The Department of Justice has what's called a capital case unit that reviews death-eligible cases and determines whether or not it's appropriate to seek the death penalty. That's a group of people that sit in D.C., so we'll be working with our colleagues at Maine Justice and Washington, D.C. to determine whether or not that's appropriate and whether or not the death penalty will be sought in this case.
You said this morning it is no exaggeration to say that his crimes are the stuff of nightmares. I don't know that anybody would disagree with you, but you obviously have access to a lot more than we do. Specifically, what was it that you saw? What was it that put you in that mind that you call this the stuff of nightmares?
Well, I've watched the video where the defendant went to Senator Hoffman's home in Champlin, and there's not only video, there's audio, and you can see him get to the door dressed in that hyper-realistic looking silicone mask, wearing what appears to be police vest, body armor, carrying a police flashlight and a gun, pound on the door and say, "This is the police, open the door." And then Senator Hoffman and his wife come to the door eventually, and you see the interaction and the words they say. And when they say, at one point he drops the flashlight down out of their eyes, and Senator Hoffman and his wife say, "You're not the police, you're not a police officer, you're not a cop." And then he starts trying to force his way in. When the senator tries to push him out the door, he pulls out his gun and starts shooting at them. It's chilling to watch. It's haunting. It's nightmarish. It looks like something out of a horror movie.
You have a job to do, which you obviously take very seriously, a lot of responsibility, clearly in this case, but you're also human. So on that level, as you are obviously required to review this stuff, that's part of how you have to do your job. You accept that burden. What's that like, just on the human level?
It was a long weekend. Watching that stuff, it's horrifying, and then knowing he's out there. And we didn't know where he was for a long time. And then when we finally learned where he was, I was at the FBI command post last night when we determined where he was, and I watched the big screen as the agents wearing their little GPS trackers started to converge on where he was, and I was listening to the traffic as they described the scene as their efforts to apprehend him, and having every reason to believe that there was going to be gunfire and bloodshed that night. It was scary. It was tense. It takes its toll. It was miraculous that it came to a resolution, at least last night, without further bloodshed, without anyone dying. But that was not certain, and it's intense when you're making decisions very quickly with limited information, with the stakes that high.
There has to be
a privilege and an honor, but it's hard.
Sure. There's obviously a lot of fog here and a lot of difficult challenges to sort of get to exactly what took place regarding these 4 stops. I want to read something I'd read. This was at StarTribune.com, and I think it's comments from the Brooklyn Park Police Chief regarding the one of the stops here, and this has to do obviously with the Hortman home. And here's the quote: "The officers get out of their car. They see what appears to be a police officer coming out of the house. Brief pause as the 2 real officers made eye contact with a man dressed like a police officer, later identified as Boelter. Suspect turns around, turns his back to them almost like he's knocking on the door. About that time, I think the suspect realizes they're not going away, right? So Boelter turns around, according to this account, starts firing at the 2 officers. They return fire before he ran into the house." Is that how you understand that part of the story? And do we know at what point, unfortunately, Melissa Hortman and her husband, Mark, were shot. Had they already been shot by that point? Has that yet been established, or can you give us any more detail on that part of the story?
They had not been. The officers, as they approached, they saw Boelter near the home. As they confronted him, or he realized they were there, at some point he started shooting. It's a little unclear as to whether he was shooting at the officers. He was definitely shot into the front door, where he shot Representative Hortman and her husband. It appears that one of them was running up the stairs and shot as he entered the home. But those officers did what they could. They fired at him. He unfortunately was able to escape into the home, commit the murders, and then out the back door.
He went out the back, is what we've been. That's your understanding of it.
That's my understanding. I don't know exactly which door, but yes.
One other question, actually two more, if I could. I really appreciate the time. I know you're on a very tight schedule
Absolutely.
here. So this is an aside, I guess, but it interests me. As I understand it, a witness said he met Boelter at a bus stop. This is a 7 a.m. Saturday, right? So this is obviously after the murders, about a mile to the east of Boelter's Fremont Avenue apartment. And the two apparently board a bus. They travel to the witness's house. He asks to purchase not just an e-bike, but also his Buick sedan, which ultimately gets abandoned miles away from Boelter's house in Green Isle later. And I guess Boelter also, they go to a U.S. bank branch. He withdraws $2,200 and then gives the man about $900. Do we have any, I think we're all curious to know, this man, this witness, he obviously, I assume, didn't have any idea who he was dealing with here, but nevertheless, why he was so motivated to, okay, I'll give up my e-bike and I'll sell you my Buick. Do we know anything else about that aspect of the story?
We're continuing to investigate. At this point, I'm not sure. It's certainly in an odd sequence in this whole affair, but of course, a lot of strange things happened in the last 72 hours here in Minnesota. So we're getting to the bottom of what happened, why it happened, and how it happened.
So what is the next step in this case?
Well, he made his initial appearance in court and earlier this afternoon in St. Paul. He has a lawyer appointed. He'll have potentially a detention hearing and a preliminary hearing next Friday, June 27th. The government has moved to detain him pending trial. There could be a hearing on that on the 27th. And then the next stage in the process is an indictment and then potentially a trial or a guilty plea. And that's up to him, of course.
Last item. You are a native Minnesotan, correct?
I am.
Okay, that's what I thought. I was talking earlier with the former St. Cloud Police Chief, Blair Anderson, who's joined us many times over the years. He's not a native, but he's made he's basically lived here for many, many years, worked here as well. And we were talking about the point that now, several years apart, we become the center of attention nationally via the George Floyd case, and now once again via this case, and that he said we have to stop saying, well, this kind of stuff just doesn't happen here, that it can happen any place, basically, where there are people. As a native Minnesotan, how do you feel about that particular issue? I'm not talking about, there's collective guilt here, collective blame, but the idea that we 5 years apart find ourselves sort of at the center, as I said, of the universe here domestically for, you'd say certainly all the wrong, tragic reasons.
I think it's something, I am from here and it saddens me. I think it's something that all of us as Minnesotans, native Minnesotans or otherwise, just long-term residents, have to reckon with and ask ourselves, why is this? It doesn't have to be this way. I'd like to think it doesn't. From here, I went to Osseo High School. Minnesota that I remember growing up didn't have this stuff, but I agree with you. We can't pretend now that it's a one-off accident, an aberration. There's a trend now, and the question is, can we do anything to stop it?
I really appreciate the time. I know you've been very busy today. Thanks again. I hope we can catch up again down the road. Thanks for the time.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Much appreciated. Let me put him back on hold here from afar. And we've just been chatting with the acting U.S. Attorney for the District of Minnesota, Joe Thompson, who you heard from this morning, revealing lots more detail than we ever had before on the charges at hand. We're going to get a brief pause in here, and then we are going to do some toy department talk. We may get back to this A-section topic as well in our final, hour and change. Jonny Athletic is in studio. So we'll mix and match the rest of the way and then maybe add, if necessary, a guest or two, try to stay on top of any breaking news as well. Jonny Athletic in just a minute here.
It's time for Jonny Athletic, Jonny Athletic, Jonny Athletic. And he's on with Dan Barrero right now.
It is that time. Jonny Athletic is kind enough to join us, and he's in studio today, thanks to our good friends at RBC Wealth Management. Let's do this for the next, 8 or 9 minutes, and then we'll just do kind of a clean break. Try to spend a minute or two on the toy department. You're one of us. I'm not.
Yeah.
And that's been part of the conversation here with former St. Cloud Police Chief Blair Anderson, who isn't one of us, but has lived here for a long time, made his livelihood here, obviously.
Doesn't really count, as you know.
Apparently not.
No.
The acting U.S. attorney who we just had on is one of us. Mm-hmm. And it's that question of every, I guess, metro area, it doesn't have to be a metro area, every place somebody lives, they want to think when there's bad news around the world, around the country, well, that's great, that's there, but something like that could never happen here. And I do think the chief made a good point that, even though maybe he's not qualified to, because he's not one of us, but has lived through a lot of stuff here, that people here have to stop saying that, because we've now had 5 years apart, two fairly momentous stories. I'm not here again to say that means everybody in Minnesota is to blame any more than I lived in Dallas for 5 years, and it is amazing how many people I'd run into would basically blame all of Dallas for the JFK assassination, which is a little bit simplistic.
Well, then you throw the Drew Pearson push-off in there, too. I mean, that's even bigger big
actually,
things.
In Minnesota, for sure. That at some point, though, you got to stop. It can't happen here, because these are life-changing, momentous events of incalculable tragedy across the board. So isn't the moral it can happen any place anymore?
100%, yeah. And I've been as guilty as anybody, of sort of leaning into that Minnesota exceptionalism, quality of life, all these things that we always say it's wonderful here, and we're kind of insulated from a lot of the riffraff other places. But I mean, it's certainly clear that over these last 5 years, those two huge things, we have to kind of look at that. Yes, there's plenty to be concerned about here. I don't want it to paralyze me or to kind of, get into that point where I'm always worried about what the next thing is around the corner. But at the same time,
I think terrorists win.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, I do think that there has to be a little bit of introspection on this. And you do wonder about, okay, how much is this just one isolated crazy guy with a gun and one isolated bad cop who just took things too far, or what? But it's still all of the eyes of the country are on us again in a very unfavorable light, and that's not a good place to be.
I mentioned that's at the top of the show too, without getting into left and right. What even, as I said, many Republicans have said, one of the great tragedies here, above and beyond the obvious tragedy, is that Melissa Hortman was less than, 2 weeks, maybe a week away from making a political decision that had her being criticized within her own party to say, we're trying to make a deal here. I'm not happy about what I'm giving up at all, but I got to do a deal. We're not in charge anymore. It's basically tied now, so we got to get something done. So that is not the philosophy of a raging ideologue.
Right.
And the irony this is among the individual, well, this is the only elected official who was murdered, assassinated in this case. That's just, to me, tragedy upon tragedy. She did not, and this is, again, here, don't listen to me. This is from many Republicans saying exactly that. This is somebody you could work with. Historically, this was somebody who, I heard on Fox 9, Garofalo basically crying over the weekend, saying that after the Republicans got swept out of office, whenever that was, that she called him, basically said, "You okay? How's everything going?" It's unspeakable, the whole thing.
Terrible. I mean, and yeah, you're right. In terms of the political environment right now, there is no compromise ever from either side. It's dig in, fight tooth and nail. And, all I hear about sort of the glory days of political action was
horse trading.
These were adults in a room that figured out, here's how we get to the least bad situation and find some sort of common ground. That's so far out the window right now. And so none of these politicians who are in office right now deserve certainly what Melissa Hortman got, but even more so someone like that who was trying to be an adult in the room, who was trying to get things done and help as many people as she can and hurt as few people as she can to suffer a fate like this. But even beyond that, I just think about the kids involved and just all of that and how this is completely mindless and senseless and none of it makes sense. And now the ramifications are going to be generational in this individual family and certainly the people right around her. It's just heartbreaking.
We'll get to some toy department stuff next segment. As I said, if you have questions for Johnny, toy department is going to be probably in play for the first time during this entire program. Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is open at 64686. One last thing. Everybody kind of was brought to this story in various ways or became aware of it over the weekend. I think I started seeing some conversation on X, I want to say in the morning when I woke up, but then it was still kind of vague and there were no names yet. And as weird as this sounds, even if no one had died, it would be an awful story. But there's something about the moment when you hear, and I had somebody call me just as the press conference was about to proceed to confirm it, saying that Melissa Hortman and her husband were murdered. It just took it to another whole level. Gone, dead. There's no coming back from this.
No, it's just unspeakably tragic. And it does, that moment really just did cast a pall over everything. Because I'll tell you, like, in the area that we live, there was sort of speculation that, hey, there's a helicopter flying overhead and looking at a park near us. And so you're also on high alert at that point, even though we weren't really close to where all of this happened. You're just wondering, what in the heck is going on? Do we need to stay inside? Like, when it rises to that level, it changes the way that you think about everything from that moment on until you convict. And to me, the most unsettling part of it was kind of like how long this did drag out.
Yes.
I mean, he was on the run for quite a while. And even though it happened, if you want to call it quickly, within days, but that's an enormous amount of time to have something like this hanging out there in our entire community. And
no
it's
question.
Just frightening, terrifying, all of those words.
To the point where some of the folks I was talking to in law enforcement thought there's a good chance he's turned the gun on himself, but even based on his own texting with his good buddy who he was renting from in that Minneapolis house. That's, I'm sort of thinking, it's like, well, if he has done that, it could take a long time, obviously, to find him because he could have done that any number of places. So I actually ended up being surprised that they found him when they did.
Well, I even thought, Dan, I told my wife at one point, I'm like, he's gone. Like, not killed. I thought, like, this seems like a guy who had all of this planned out. And so if he did, I thought he is gone.
Yep.
And we're not going to find him, or it's going to be way down the road. And so thankfully, it did happen as quickly as it did, but that lead time from when you first hear the news to when he's finally caught is still it felt like forever.
I've said, for me, everybody's got their own. What's the most chilling about this? And we talked to the U.S. attorney about him having to review that video at the Hoffman home. He just said it was just devastating to watch. For me, it's the text from.
Yeah.
The alleged perpetrator, to his wife. Dad went to war last night.
Yeah.
I mean, that's chilling to me.
No, yeah, it's absolutely completely frightening. And I guess to me, the thing that I'm struggling with the most right now, and is probably unwise, is just the discourse around this. And it has not, in my opinion, made a dent in any of the.
And it won't.
And it won't at all. Everyone's going to their corners. And there is no. It reminds me of the the school shooting and, in the elementary school back in the day. Like, if nothing is going to happen from that, then nothing's going to happen. And same with this. You can just see, like, there has been no sort of, hey, we need to stop and take a look at what the heck is going on in our lives right now. It isn't. It's just, let's go to our corners. Let's fight this out. Let's throw all sorts of disinformation and on both sides of it. And like, it's just, it's gross.
And let's root for this is why he did it.
Yes.
Because this will validate whatever my view is on whatever.
Yep, absolutely.
Rather than let's follow the story in terms of wherever it goes.
There is a helplessness that I feel right now that's just, it's really hard to shake.
We'll pause bottom of the hour. You have some Wolves questions, NBA questions. There is a lot to discuss, especially surrounding the Kevin Durant speculation. So we'll try to update you or have Johnny update all of us on the latest he has learned there as well. Bradshaw and Bryan, KFAN text line is 64686. Jonny Athletic, kind enough to join us in studio. We'll continue with him next.
I'm told the Phoenix Suns remain in active conversations around the league on a Kevin Durant deal, but their focus over the last several days has been on three teams, and that's the Miami Heat, Houston Rockets, and Minnesota Timberwolves. We know his preferred destinations, though, are the Rockets, Spurs, and the Heat. And so the Suns have been working with Durant's business partner, Rich Kleiman, on just figuring out exactly where he could end up. Could it be one of his three preferred destinations? Could it be a wild card team? Because, listen, at the end of the day, his expiring contract of $54.7 million is going to play a part in this. And I'm told Durant has no desire to be in Minnesota with the Timberwolves. So how does that shape how the Minnesota Timberwolves and other teams that could have interest that are outside his preferred list decide how to move forward with these Durant discussions?
I think that's your guy, Shams, isn't it?
That is my guy.
That's your guy. Jonny Athletic is in studio. Shams on the very latest regarding the Kevin Durant steam. And let me start this conversation by proclaiming, as a let's get Durant if you can person, that's how I've been for quite some time, I'm 100% out on him if he literally is going to be passive-aggressive or even more aggressive about not wanting to be here. Because I do think there are players where it doesn't matter.
Yes.
I think on him, you absolutely can't get near him unless you are convinced that he wants to play here, because he'll kill you. He might even get the coach fired.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very fair assessment of him and his temperament over the last 5-6 years. We've seen it when it doesn't go well in Brooklyn and Phoenix and kind of all over the place. And so there should be, and there is, I can tell you, Dan, like there is trepidation on the Wolves' part about that aspect of dealing for Kevin Durant, these prospects. There's, I would say, a little confusion because in February, when we reported at The Athletic about this extensive talks that they had, Durant had sort of given them indications that he was okay coming to Minnesota, that he would be all right teaming up with Ant and was ready to do this, and the deal just didn't work out. And so for whatever reason, and I don't presume to be in Kevin Durant's head, so I'm not sure, but things have changed. And so I believe that the Timberwolves will not be in on the deal unless they get assurances from Kevin Durant that his mind has flipped again the other way. And I will say this, we saw last February when Jimmy Butler said, I don't want to go to Golden State, I'm going to Phoenix. That didn't work out. He ultimately ended up there and it worked out well. So there is a possibility that Houston, San Antonio, Miami don't give what is needed, and Kevin has to figure out something else and then maybe looks at it differently with the Timberwolves. But until he does say, hey, I'm in on this, I believe you're right, and I think the Timberwolves are of that stance of like, look, we can't mess with this unless we know that he's all in.
Who are you hearing that Phoenix wants from us? Can you give us at least some ideas or some possibilities here that work financially, et cetera?
Sure, yeah. So all indications are that Phoenix does not want to do some sort of tear down and rebuild. They want to be competitive right away. And so they want veterans that are going to help. They would also like a young player. So, the kind of a couple of the scenarios are, is it Rudy Gobert, DiVincenzo, Rob Dillingham, or is it Randall, DiVincenzo, Rob Dillingham? Something like that would make financial feasibility for making the deal happen and would certainly give Phoenix a really good package in return for a 37-year-old Durant on a 1-year deal. I think that the Wolves are hesitant to put that much on the table because Phoenix doesn't have anything anywhere else right now. San Antonio, for everyone that we talk to, San Antonio and Houston have been sort of lukewarm in the way they've engaged. Mm-hmm. And Miami, I don't think has anything that is really compelling. Yep. Is it Wiggins and picks? Is it, Jaquez? Okay, that's fine. But it's not anything that's going to blow them out of the water. Here's what I believe. I haven't been told this, but I believe in reading the tea leaves and listening to people that I've talked to about this. I think Phoenix wants Minnesota. I think they want some combination of whether it's Gobert or Randall. I would lean they probably want Gobert. If you want to be really competitive in the regular season, Gobert will do that for you. And he's been in the playoffs every year of his career. So he can raise the floor for the Suns. And so it would be, Gobert, and then you get a good player in DiVincenzo, and then see how everything else shakes out. I don't think Phoenix is going to be able to do much better than that.
If they want, like you say, veteran talent, you're
exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Now, and I think from my perspective, I think that the Wolves are a little hesitant on Gobert because of how important he is defensively for them. I know that they love Randall and what they saw from him in the first 2 rounds, and Chris Finch thinks he's just, he's great, and that in year 2 in their system and everything, it will go better. And so they're sort of wrestling with all of this and trying to figure out what's happening, but none of it really even matters if KD is saying, I don't want to come here. There are teams we've seen, like Toronto traded for Kawhi Leonard when Kawhi said, I don't want to be here. The Wolves aren't going to do that. I just don't see them kind of taking an unwilling or reluctant Kevin Durant. But as it stands right now, I believe that Phoenix wants the Timberwolves to get in this and make a deal and go forward. They would prefer that over what they have anywhere else now.
Let me try a completely different approach. And this might be an overreaction to who is in the finals this year. Mm-hmm. But there are people who say, look, the moral of the story is stop chasing stars and just start building rosters that include 9, 10, 11 players that give you incredible depth, that you don't have maybe the same at the top level superstar talent, but look at what the Pacers have done to a certain extent. Look what Oklahoma City's done. Now, Shea is pretty high shelf talent at this point, and maybe his number 2 is as well, and maybe Holmgren is, coming in that direction. But is there any conversation among the Wolves? Because I think they feel they've got some young people they like.
Yes.
That they say, no, we're gonna play this a completely different way, and we're gonna try to build that kind of team a la the Pacers.
Yeah, I do think that a lot of teams are looking at that model going forward because not only what we've seen from the Pacers and the Thunder getting to this point, but also just the fiscal realities of this new collective bargaining agreement make it almost impossible to have a 3 max player roster construction.
Yes.
And so I do think that there is a new focus on depth and on doing that. What I will say to counter that just a little bit is what we are seeing in these finals right now. Yeah, all that depth did get them here, but both teams have shrunk their rotations significantly. I mean, Oklahoma City's playing like 6.5, maybe 7. The Pacers 7.5 right now. And so the depth is great, I think, for the regular season, for a lot of the playoffs. But when it comes down to real crunch time in the finals, I think any team is really going to shrink down to your best 6, 7 guys and go from there. But just the reality of the situation is teams cannot anymore pay 3 guys $40 million plus. It's just not, you can't do it under the rules and the second apron and all of these things. And so you're going to have to maximize depth and flexibility going forward to keep turning things over, because you're going to be able to keep 2 guys, 3 guys, and then just, everyone else is going to kind of turn over through the revolving door.
Marshall in Minnetonka with an interesting question. All of Conley's big trades so far have been unexpected. Rudy, Cat, the Dillingham pick. So it's hard to predict, but if you had to, what's your guess about who he targets that nobody is currently talking about? Is it possible there's a wild card here of a player we didn't even know there's available, or the kernel of a trade where Conley has identified this guy, we want to go out and get him to sort of change everything again? Is it possible that player or players exist, and who would they be?
It's entirely possible. The point is well taken. I will give kind of the listeners some sort of like inside baseball here on how these processes have played out. The Gobert trade was a shock, was a surprise, but I had started to get some inklings that at least they were interested in him kind of in the weeks leading up to it. And then when it came, I wasn't ready for it, of course, but it didn't shock me that he was the guy. When Cat was traded, I kind of knew that there were talks happening, and there was a possibility. Again, I didn't think it was going to happen right then, but it was one of those things where I felt it in the wind a little bit going forward. And so, the same Durant would qualify for that as well. But if we do want to look at one that I was just thinking of on the drive over here, that this is not any sort of reporting source basis, but the San Antonio Spurs have the number 2 pick in the draft. The consensus number 2 pick is a guy named Dylan Harper, lead guard, big guy, that most people say you can't pass on this guy. He's too good. Bring him in. He's with Wembanyama, Stephon Castle. Go for it. The Spurs just traded for De'Aaron Fox in the offseason.
Yes, that's right.
If I was to just kind of pull a name out of thin air as like, hey, Ant and De'Aaron Fox are good friends. Ant loves De'Aaron Fox. The Wolves have a need for a long-term point guard. Would that name shock me if it just kind of came out of nowhere and all of a sudden the Wolves have traded for De'Aaron Fox? That would not shock me. No. And so.
Don't toy with me, Johnny.
Yeah, I know.
That's my guy, De'Aaron Fox. Love De'Aaron Fox. Don't do this, Johnny.
So he asked for a name. I'm giving him. There is no basis in reporting on any of that, but I'm just giving a possibility of a guy that I would look at and say that would make a lot of sense to me.
Interesting. Another texter. Where did it go? Serious question. Is the difference between Cat and Durant that great? Seems to me some similarities with lack of D. Durant's a great shooter, but Cat is not 50% or less, is he? Subtract the players we would have to give up, and we will be better than we would have been just keeping Cat?
Yeah.
By the way, I still like the Cat trade. This is Kyle and Hutchinson.
Yeah, so, everyone knows I'm a Cat guy, but the difference right now between Cat and Durant, in terms of what the Timberwolves need, is Durant is just a cold-blooded assassin scorer who knows exactly how to get his shot at any moment in any game. Cat is more of a kind of just gravity guy who is opportunistic and takes advantage when it's available to him. But when you need someone to really create something, I just don't think that's his strength. And so what we've seen both in these last 2 conference finals against Dallas and OKC is there's been too much shot creating pressure put on Ant's shoulders. And he is kind of the only one who's able to do that. Durant fills a very specific need for them at the highest level that you could possibly ask somebody to do it, of we need a bucket right now. Who is it going to be? And if it's Ant or KD, that is a dynamic pair that is going to be really, really difficult to stop. And so the difference is significant from just a shot creation standpoint. And so I think that would be, and then I also think I will tell people, I think wherever he ends up, Minnesota, Houston, Toronto, whoever, the return for Kevin Durant is going to be a lot smaller than what you really think. And so this is not, he's 37, he's 1 year left on his deal. This is not like trading for Cat at 29 years old.
So if we play this out, if Rudy's the guy that goes, then obviously, at least in theory, Nas becomes your center. Your defense is...
Or Julius Randle.
Well, yeah, that's true. If you want to go small, really small ball, your defense becomes much, much inferior to what it has been. But on the other hand, you say, well, then presumably you're keeping Julius Randle. And if Julius Randle is your third option, not your second option, that's pretty formidable in its own way, right? Or are the Wolves better off if Randle's the guy that's going, So you don't have a number 3 guy, quite that good, but you still have your defensive anchor.
Yeah, but I think both are imperfect options because you're right in terms of if Rudy goes and it's a Randall, Durant, McDaniels front court or Maz, Durant, however you want to fix it. You shift from a defensive-minded, defensive-first team to an offensive-first team, and you can still be really, really good. I think that there are you can make things very difficult on an opponent, but there are going to be clear issues with rebounding and clear issues with rim protection. And I don't know if those are fatal or not, but they're enough to make you think. And then the other spot, if you trade Randall, instead, KD slides into the 4, and it's just a little more seamless sort of integration into a starting 5 with a KD, Rudy, McDaniels front court. But then you still have the issue where you're going to run into it in the playoffs of Rudy is an unbelievable defensive player for you. But man, offensively, what we're seeing, I think what we have learned in these NBA finals is that what gives the Thunder the most problems is that you have a team where all 5 people on the floor are threats. And we just did not have that with the Wolves against the Thunder. There were too many guys, Rudy in particular, McDaniels a little bit, Mike Conley a lot, where you just didn't have to defend them at a high level. And so when if you have Rudy there, you got to figure out ways to use Rudy in a different way than they did last year if you want to take that next step and get to the finals.
Mitchell believes you can't any longer play Durant major minutes at the 4, that you're asking for trouble, that you got to play him at the 3. Do you agree?
It's possible, but I don't necessarily agree because he did miss a bunch of games 2 years ago. This last season, he missed some games, but then towards the end of the season, they kind of shut him down a little bit. And so I don't think it was as drastic. I would be concerned about his health, but less about can he survive the physicality of the 4, because there are just so many teams.
Can he rebound enough at this
point? Right. I think it's rebounding would be thing, but I would just be more worried about hamstrings, calves, soft tissue, stuff like that. That's going to happen whether he's at the 3 or at the 4. So I would be less concerned about him getting physically beaten up than more concerned just about managing his load that way of just, hey, you're 37. You're only going to be playing 30 minutes a night instead of 36, 37. Then we get in the playoffs. We'll see how it goes. But either way, at either position, I think they would have to be careful with how they deploy him during the regular season.
Do we have? We're 17 and 31 right now.
17 and 31. Yep. Good
Obviously,
picks.
that's a chip, maybe potentially a 17. Do we feel like? Do they think there's somebody at 17 that can help? I mean, how deep is this draft considered?
They like the draft. You'll be shocked to learn that they've said privately, that they feel good about where they're at. That's what every team says right now. I do think it's a deep enough draft where you can get someone not ready to play away, but hey, when it's time to say goodbye to the next guy, you have this guy in the pipeline. The real challenge, though, honestly, is for Chris Finch to start to play Shannon Dillingham, Miller, Minot.
Is Conley going to challenge him on that?
Well, Finch did say at the end of the season, I got to do that. Now, he's said that plenty of times before. So, it will be more of a coaching issue than maybe even a talent issue that they have to, Chris Finch is going to have to just open his mind to that and figure that part of it out. And we'll see if he does that or not.
Any chance Tibbs becomes lead assistant coach to run the defense?
He'd be good for the defense, right? I mean, defense isn't a problem here, really. But I will say this: Finch and Tibbs have a good relationship.
Is that right?
Yeah. Finch has told me before that there's been off seasons where they've grabbed dinner, they've spent time, they talk ball. And they neither one of them likes to play young guys a whole lot. So there's maybe a little bit more in common with them than you might say. Finch is much better as a bedside manner, kind of overall leader and politician than Tibbs can be. But there's a lot of admiration and respect that the two have for each other.
What is well, I'll tell you what, I'll save this question for the next segment. Since I mentioned Tibbs. The assumption I think a lot of people had is that if you're going to fire a coach who probably shouldn't be fired under those conditions, best season for New York in 25 years, that most people assumed you got something in place. Not a dream, but a reality. You know you can get this guy. So what does this whole approach the Knicks have taken, does that say to you that they really didn't, that they were just hoping and they were arrogant enough to say, well, if we want Jason Kidd, we're going to find a way to get him, and Jason Kidd's going to want to come here? How do we explain firing a guy who doesn't deserve to be fired and at least not having a plan to say, hey, all right, calm down, guys. I know you're unhappy, but look who we're presenting at our next press conference.
Yeah, I think it has been mismanaged, and it may end up very well working out in the end. They may hire someone who helps take them to another level, but they won't be able to say that this was the plan all along. It was, hey, now we cast this wide net, and we found Coach X, and we think that he's going to be, a great guy, and then he turns out to be a great one, and it works forward. We've seen it before where the Warriors, they fire Mark Jackson after having success and then go to Steve Kerr. Everyone knew that Steve Kerr was a real viable option. Everyone knew that Larry Brown, when he was hired by the Pistons, was like, that's the guy. You go get him. He's available.
Carlisle's the one who got fired,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And it worked out.
It did.
This time around, we are seeing that there isn't that option out there. And my guess is that they did think Jason Kidd is going to be the guy. Whether he's the right guy or not, that's who they had. And maybe eventually it'll figure out and it will somehow work out if there's a contract snafu with Kidd and the Mavericks or something like that. But I don't think anyone, if they were being honest in the Knicks organization, would say the plan was to ask for permission for 8 different guys, get denied, and then go back to the Mike Browns and the Taylor Jenkinses of the world, and then whoever else, and then end up wherever they're going to end up. I think they thought, okay, we'll fire Tibbs, we'll bring in Kidd, and then we're going forward with it. And it has not been that smooth.
We got a lot of good texts coming in. We got another segment with Jonny Athletic. I'll ask him a couple key questions regarding the NBA Finals, which continue tonight, I believe, in Oklahoma City. We'll continue with our in-studio guest next here. Jonny Athletic, what is the moral of the NBA Finals?
Man, it's just been a great series. My hope is, I know that some people look at the ratings and it's not watching stuff, but what my hope is that the moral is that the league itself and its television partners understand that this new wave of talent is coming and there's no stopping it, and they better embrace how these guys play the game and where they are living currently. And so the only way forward for this league is to finally relinquish their death grip on LeBron and Steph and KD and be like, look,
it's coming.
Yep, and it's coming. And so
it's going to be inevitable at some point.
Exactly. And so I do think while, maybe not everyone in the world is watching this finals right now, they are putting out a product that is marketable and is really entertaining, and these players are compelling. And so and it is the basketball part of it is you have 5 guys on the floor that are all threats, that you cannot take a blink on any of them, and from an offensive standpoint, and that is how you combat generational defense, which is what the Oklahoma City Thunder are. They're a generational defense, but the Pacers have 1-2 games because they can just spread them out, and they have enough guys out there that can do damage.
Did I see the spread tonight is 11? Gargi, is that true? Look that up.
It may have gotten there. I heard 9.5 earlier today, but I'll look to see where it is now.
So borderline double digits. Yeah. And again, maybe they know something. I don't know.
Well, I think even in Game 3, like the Pacers were, it was a 6.5 or 7. Like, it does feel like the odds makers feel with Oklahoma City like they did kind of with the Patriots of Moss and Brady, where like they couldn't make a line big enough to get the other team, to get the opponents to bet. And so that's kind of what a lot of it is designed for. Yeah.
DraftKings has it at 9
right now.
Yeah, still a really big number for a tightly contested series.
How do you pronounce the Oklahoma City coach's name?
Mark Daigneault.
Mm-hmm. So I loved what he said. This might have been yesterday's pressers, or maybe the day before. I don't know. And I just thought it was such a good observation that maybe tells you a little bit about the way he coaches. And he said, basically, look, what we have to guard against is, he said, we won the last game, but we never controlled it. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was a great message. Now, of course, it's always easier when you win, I think. But he's 100% right. And to me, we're back to that's what the best coaches do. They don't lie to their team and pretend that, you won the game, that's great, and you finished it really well. Mm-hmm. Pacers stopped scoring. Yep. You don't have to apologize for that because some of that was your good defense, but we didn't really control the game.
Yeah, and there are times, we've both heard it a million times, where a coach says something because he thinks he has to, respecting the opponent, trying to keep his guys on it. I think this is genuine on Dagnall's part. He knows that these Pacers are not going to stop coming after him. They are not intimidated by them at all. And they were down 10 points late in the third quarter, and Miles Turner and Siakam and Nesmith, all these guys are hitting shots. And so I think that he understands that Indiana is dangerous, and that this is a team, the Thunder, that have typically blown teams out for most of the season, but they have to come into this game with the mentality of, we better scratch and claw for everything, or else we're going to go back to Game 6 down 3-2. They've already lost to Indiana once in their building. And so I think it is, like Greg Popovich has always said, it's appropriate fear. Like, you have to understand how close you were on the razor's edge to losing that game, which they were. It took a unbelievable fourth quarter defensively, and then Shea just hitting some unbelievable shots for them to pull that thing out.
A couple texts have come in. Ask Johnny if Cat is proud of his 2-for-2 record of getting Tibbs fired. Can we put this on Cat?
This one I don't think is on Cat. I think
people in New York wanted to fire. The other guy they wanted to fire was Cat.
Yes, exactly. He was the one that was taking the brunt.
Bedfellow. No, what's the expression? Misery. No,
makes strange bedfellows.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. I think that Cat was definitely more in the firing squad even than Tibbs. And everything I know about that situation was they got along fine. Were they best buddies? No, but it wasn't like it was in Minnesota. So this was not a Cat-led insurrection. If anything, Cat's got to worry about his teammates taking shots at him and kind of all of that stuff. That's a bigger issue in New York than Cat versus Tibbs.
This is Clayton from Rochester. Can you even see Guardsy anymore, or is the glass fogging up after that De'Aaron Fox trade talk?
It's a little.
I like that package. A+ show today.
This is a big
from Clayton.
Big.
I don't remember you being. I knew you liked him. I didn't realize you were religious about him. Yeah.
I love everything about him.
Well,
he plays at a good pace. He can make some great shots. Part of it too, it's the Mike James factor. I've seen him just kill the Wolves.
Yeah, he has.
Even in like an NBA Cup game a couple of years ago.
Is it not fair? One of the things I was talking, I don't know if I mentioned this to you, is this was when, the Pacers look like, well, they are still have a chance to win the series, but when they were ahead in the series, and people are saying, okay, what do we get out of that? What do they know about Oklahoma City? And I think part of it is there is a great advantage to having two ball handlers and two people who, and I say ball handlers, I mean they both can break down a defense if nothing else is working on the play. That's to me what the Pacers represent, even though one of them isn't always great by any means.
Yeah.
Either you can say neither of them is great, but they have that capability. And the Wolves just don't have that right now.
Yep, it's a huge thing. We saw when the Wolves looked their best against the Thunder is when Jaden McDaniels was that second guy coming, pump faking, going to the basket, doing that thing. And so maybe he eventually can add more of that to his game. But for everything that Mike Conley has done for this team, it just wasn't there in terms of he could break down and get into the paint, but he's not a threat.
Right.
Whereas a guy like De'Aaron Fox, a guy, someone like that is a threat to score. Nembhard is a threat to score.
Correct, exactly.
All of the time.
Yeah.
And so that makes all of OKC's help defense hesitate just a little bit. And so when they hesitate just a little bit, that's all Ant needs. It's just a sliver. And he could not find enough of those advantages in the Western Conference Finals because he didn't have enough consistency around him in that regard.
You have to get Edwards relief. I really believe this more than ever, that otherwise I think it's going to start discouraging him and beating him down a little bit. And look, in a perfect world, it's Dillingham, right? It's just that it doesn't seem much reason to believe he's ready to do that as soon as next season. But, he, in theory, represents exactly that's why they wanted to go out and get him, I would assume.
Yes.
But he ain't there yet, we don't think.
Well, he's not there yet, but he's got a full summer, and he's got a full training camp. So is there a possibility?
Is he ever going to bulk up? Of course, I guess he can't get taller.
He's 20 years old. I think he can. But the other thing that if I'm a Wolves fan and I want to take from this Pacers success that they've had against OKC, is that it doesn't necessarily have to be De'Aaron Fox or Kevin Durant.
Correct.
Like Nembhard is end of the first round guy that just knows how to play and is young enough and spry enough and feisty enough to do it. So maybe that is Dillingham, or maybe that's the 17th pick, or maybe that's Lonzo Ball, or whoever. As we do get conditioned and enamored in the NBA, rightfully so.
Names.
Stars,
no question.
stars.
Yeah.
It can be just a really small. Is Nesmith a star? No. But he is giving them exactly what they need, and I still think that there is a better than even chance that Jaden McDaniels becomes even more of that his game just continues to grow and blossom. They give him more responsibility, and he becomes more of an attacking threat that way as well.
Matt from Little Falls, isn't Johnny supposed to be plugged into the Twins too, or were those the salad days?
Those are the salad days. I'm not a ball guy anymore. I haven't been.
We're back in the tank. The Twins are struggling again. They even lost yesterday in the 9th. Well, that's less than the 10th. Score is tied in the 9th. They got swept by the Astros. I think, Guardsy, aren't we down to 2 games above 500? We're flirting with 500 again all of a sudden.
It's a tough weekend for LaVelle and his brother in Houston.
Oh, that's right. They were they there for the entire series?
I think they go for the weekend, yeah.
Yeah, I saw they were walking past a No Kings protest or something that they ran into as well. Yeah, on the way to the
Classic LaVelle to just walk into a No Kings protest, probably unprompted.
Did he leave his underwear in Houston?
Yeah.
That's the key question, like he does in China.
I haven't been plugged in with the Twins. I watch him as a fan, which is kind of nice. It's kind of a little different. But I don't have any sources there anymore or anything I leave that to Dan Hayes and Gleeman. Those are our guys there.
I'll give you one last hanging curveball as we wrap things up here. I think you'll want to hit this one out of the park. I don't know, maybe not. Somebody mentioned the other day that the ESPN basketball culture, so to speak, can you size it up, sort of, or encapsulate it in this nutshell? That the other day, was it Halliburton? I think it was Halliburton was basically saying, responding to criticism.
Yes.
And Stephen A., being Stephen A., suddenly made the whole bit. He assumed it was about him, and maybe it was, but he wanted to assume it was about him, because he wanted to make the entire story about, I'm going to be here, regardless of whether you're here or not. And look, we all are full of ourselves. We all have egos about the impact we have and bouncing off of people who might be turning it back on us. But to me, it sadly tells, if anybody wants to go to ESPN and say, here's why people push back on your coverage, this is it. You turn these games into these personality battles having to do with your person, as opposed to the players and coaches themselves. Yeah,
that's what it is. They are the story, and it's not the game. It's not the players. I mean, how many times do we see Stephen A.? Oh, the Knicks did this. How does that make you feel, Stephen A.? That is irrelevant to the proceedings. But I will say this: the reason that Stephen A. has become so powerful there, and the reason that Charles Barkley is so powerful, is because people respond to it.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's unfortunate, because what I want as a consumer is I want storytelling.
Right.
I want reporting. I want information. I don't want someone yelling at me and really just yelling at the players and saying, you got to step up, and this, you don't want this from me. Like you're an analyst. That's it. But the problem with that ESPN presentation of the league is that it is way too personality driven on the personalities on the panel, not on the league, not of the coaches.
I think that's worse than even Charles. I think it's almost on another level.
It is,
because I don't think Charles plays it quite the same way that Stephen A. does.
I would say, at least with Charles and with TNT, they have multiple pitches, because Charles will do some of those things, but they have enough airtime where they can get into the real analysis of
and
the game.
Next
and
thing
all
might
that.
be mocking Charles. That's
Exactly.
the other thing.
Exactly.
They're never mocking Stephen.
No. There's no
That's not allowed to
self-awareness.
happen. No.
There's no
Mad Dog
self-awareness.
does. Yeah. That's only on Wednesdays.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep.
I'm not sure. This text claims it's Jason from Egan. I don't believe it. I think it's John. I think it's actually more likely Guardsy. Am I in the minority watching SGA from a style of play? I'm not finding that enjoyable. Just one person, so they're not worried about me. But if Luka and SGA is a new style that we have to learn to love, I don't think I can. SGA was exemplary as a star in winning Game 4.
Yeah.
Exemplary in his approach. I'm sorry. It's just he's a hell of a player.
I will say this. This might surprise you. I'm amazed, and I think he deserves great credit for this. I don't know what he did. His balance is so much better from the Western Conference Finals to the Finals. He's never on the ground. He's finishing through
stronger
contact.
as the playoffs go on.
We see players wear down. I don't know how you improve your balance from the first quarter of Game 1 to what he's doing now. He's
still going to the free throw line 15 times a game.
Well, only late in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Other than that, it was like 2 until then.
Yeah.
But so I give him credit. Whatever he did, his equilibrium is so much more even now. It's great.
He is a great player. Sorry,
he's a great player. The
Never
one
denied
thing,
that.
The one thing I hate.
It's not that you don't deny it. It's that, including the texter, it's 80% of the conversation. That's been always my issue. It should be part of the conversation with him, but I think it's the percentage is too great given how great and effortless the things that he can do that aren't fancy but are effective. That's
my one quibble that I have. I hate the push off.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and I saw it again last game a couple times. I don't know why it's not called.
I don't know.
I have no problems agreeing on that.
I have no idea why that is not called. It's right in front of the officials all the time. Why they let him do that?
Rudolph would have called it. Daryl Garrettson would have called it.
Yep.
The old style guy. You wouldn't have gotten away with that.
Dick Pavetta.
Dick Pavetta would have had him fouled out.
Thrown him away, throw him out of game. But I hate that part of it. But there's no denying he is as good as anybody in the league at getting to his spot and then knocking that shot down.
Thanks for coming in. This was fun and a tough day, I know. We covered a lot of ground. Jonny Athletic, we'll see you again probably in 2027, you think?
See you at the State Fair.
We'll see you at the fair.
That's okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Throw us a bone. That's okay.
I fought traffic all the way over here. I'm going the opposite way of traffic, so this is what I do for you guys.
We'll wrap up what's been a pretty difficult at times program for all the obvious reasons when we can.
Show Wrap is presented by American Pressure, commercial-grade pressure washer since 1975.
It's the Bumper to Bumper Show Wrap.
We want to thank an outstanding array of guests today, including our just concluded discussion with Jonny Athletic, who joined us in studio today. We also had a great conversation with former St. Cloud Police Chief Blair Anderson, who, as it turns out, lives inside the lockdown radius in Brooklyn Park of the Melissa Hortman home as well. We talked a lot about the law enforcement aspect of the story. We talked about the human part of the story for him as well. And we got all the news updates from Fox 9's Paul Bloom. He joined at 4:02 as well. And we added, during the show, between 5 and 5:15, the acting U.S. Attorney for Minnesota, Joe Thompson, who, of course, presided over today's news conference in which the federal and state murder charges were, in fact, unveiled. I did get word, I didn't even mention this to you, Guardsy, officially, that Andy Luger, the previous permanent U.S. attorney for Minnesota, is going to join us in studio on Friday at 3:30.
Outstanding.
So we'll have a chance. I think, he's like a lot of people, so give me I want a minute or two to think about what I want to get into and what makes sense. And we've had him in studio before. He agreed to come in again later this week, so we look forward to that. And I'm sure we'll mix and match other guests as the week goes on. Is Luigi back from the continent? Do you know?
I think he is.
Okay.
I'll text him tonight. I thought he said last week, I'll see you next Tuesday.
Oh.
I thought so, but
okay.
we'll confirm
find out.
We'll confirm.
One way or another, we expect Luigi on tomorrow's program. And maybe some Seifert. We'll see if there's anything left to say about the Minnesota Vikings. Thanks for listening. Thanks for texting. And thanks for watching. We will talk to you tomorrow beginning at 3 o'clock right here on The Fan.